Hello and welcome to Introduction to Microsoft Excel. In this class, we'll be covering some of the basic features of Microsoft Excel, such as what you're seeing on the screen, certain formatting options, and how to do basic formulas. So one of the first things we're going to talk about here are our tabs, our ribbon tabs actually, and our ribbon. So let me just go ahead and make this a little bit bigger. So our ribbon tabs are located right above our ribbon here, and you'll see them as Home, Insert, Page Layout, Formulas, Data, Review, and View. So each one of these tabs ribbon tabs that I click on, you'll see that it changes your ribbon and you have different options in your ribbon. You also have your columns along the top of your grid area here. And each Excel document has currently 16,384 columns that you can use. Now typically I've never used more than what you see on the screen, but you have those options in case you need them. And down along the side here you have your rows. And currently in Microsoft Excel there are 1,048,576 rows. Again, I've never used more than a couple hundred, but you do have that option in case you need it. Another thing that you're seeing on the screen here is you'll see this green box along the cell. This is called the cell pointer, and this indicates where your typing is going to go whenever you type. And so I could use like the arrow keys on my keyboard to move the cell pointer down to cell C3, and then if I type something in here, this is where the typing is going to go. Next, we're going to talk about the Sheet tab and the tab scrolling arrows. So before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and shrink the screen down back to its normal size, and then I'm going to refocus that down here. And so we have here our Sheet tabs, and right now Microsoft Excel, it opens up as a workbook. So right now it has one sheet in it, but because it's a book, you could add several more sheets to it. And to do that, you would just click here where it says New Sheet. And you can add several new sheets to your sheet tabs, or to your workbook actually. And you can also rename these worksheets. You don't have to call them Sheet 1, Sheet 3, Sheet 4. You can rename them if you'd like. For example, if you just double click on it, that'll highlight the name of the worksheet tab there. And you can give it a new name such as and voila, you've renamed the worksheet tab. You could also reorder these sheet tabs too. If I wanted to put January 2021 here in front of sheet 1, I could just click on it, hold down the click, drag it over in front of sheet 1, and then release the click, and that'll place it there. Another option that you have is you can delete out these worksheets after you've added them. And I'm going to go ahead and shrink the screen down a little bit. And so if I wanted to delete out worksheet 1 here, all I have to do is right click on the worksheet, and from the menu that comes up, choose delete. Now it's going to ask me if I'm certain I want to delete this worksheet. That's because a lot of deletions that you do in Microsoft Excel, you can undo them. But the ones that you can't undo, it's going to give you this alert and say that it's going to be permanently deleted, which means you can't undo that. And since I want to permanently delete this, I'm going to go ahead and hit delete, and I've deleted that worksheet tab. And if you add so many worksheets to your workbook here that you can no longer see your first worksheet, so I'm just going to continue and add worksheets here until I no longer see January 2021. And once I get to that point, you can use your worksheet tabs to scroll through your worksheets. And your worksheet tab is in the lower corner here, and you just click there, and that'll allow you to scroll through your sheet tabs so you can get back to your first one again. So next we're going to talk about some of the things that you can type into Microsoft Excel. For example, you can type in text, numbers, dates and times, and formulas. However, there are things that you have to pay attention to or that you probably need to know about before entering in this type of information. For example, if you type in text into Microsoft Excel, one of the things you have to pay attention for is if you type in more text than what's in the original size of the cell, it'll display that text over the cell so long as there's nothing in the next cell. So if I typed in here chocolate chip cookies, it's actually displaying the text into cell B1, but it's still all technically in cell A1. And I know this because when I click on cell A1, I see chocolate chip cookies in the formula bar, but when I click on cell B1, it is no longer in the formula bar. And this confused me at first when I started using Excel, because I would say, oops, I forgot to capitalize the C in chocolate chip cookies, and I would double click on cell B1 and it would go away. So in order to capitalize it, I would actually have to double click on cell A1 and then use my cell pointer or use my arrows to move over and actually manipulate that within the cell, and then hit enter when I'm done. And of course, if there was something already typed into cell B1, it wouldn't display over those cells. So if I typed in something else here over B1, now chocolate chip cookies isn't displaying into cell B1 because there's something there. But it's still technically all in that cell, it just won't show it all. And later on in the class, we're going to show you how to change the lengths of your columns, so that way if you type in something like chocolate chip cookies and it doesn't fit into the cell, it will still show up in the column because we'll just make the column longer. Another thing you can type into Microsoft Excel are numbers, but the thing to watch out for when you type in numbers is that numbers align to the right hand side of the cell, whereas text aligns to the left hand side of the cell. So sometimes if you're creating an Excel document, the numbers and text could kind of look like they're running on together there. And we're going to show you later on in this class how you can center everything in a cell so you don't have to worry about that. You can also type dates and times into Microsoft Excel, but Microsoft Excel loves to auto format dates and times on you. So for example, if I were to type in here, say January 2021 and hit enter, once I hit enter, boom, Microsoft auto formats that to another date that we don't particularly want. So later on in class, we're going to show you how you can format cells so that way Microsoft Excel won't auto format it for you. But just be aware that if you don't pre-format a cell to a specific date or time format, Microsoft Excel will pick one and it's not necessarily the one you want to use. Finally, you can put formulas into Microsoft Excel. And we're going to cover that later. The only thing I'm going to mention about formulas right now is that all formulas and functions must begin with the equal sign. It is the equal sign that lets Microsoft Excel know that you're working with a formula or a function and not with numbers or text. Next, I'm going to talk about how to change the contents of a cell around. So to do that, I'm going to clear this screen first and put in some things that I can actually change, and then we'll begin showing you how to change cell contents, clear cells, undo, and redo. And now that I've got some things here that I can actually clear out, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do that. Now the first way in which you can clear information from a cell is just simply to click on the cell and then hit the delete key on your keyboard. That'll delete out whatever information's in that cell and leave you with a nice clean cell there. Another thing you can do is double click on a cell. Double clicking on a cell puts your cursor in that cell, and then you can use your arrow keys to position your cursor and then delete out what's in that cell. And when you do this, they also call this in-cell editing. Another thing you can do is just simply click on a cell and start typing. When you do that, it automatically takes out what was in that cell and replaces it with your new typing. And another way you can change information around in a cell is whatever is in that cell gets displayed in the formula bar. So you can click into the formula bar and then just delete out information in the formula bar and retype in your new information. Finally, you can use the clear icon on the toolbar. So for example, if I highlighted all these cells here, I can then go ahead and go to the clear icon, which is located in the corner up here. And if I click on the clear icon, I'm going to get these options that appear: clear formats, clear cell contents, clear content comments, and clear hyperlinks. Since in this case we want to clear everything, I'm just going to click on clear all, and it will go ahead and it will clear out everything that I had highlighted over here. Finally, if you accidentally delete something that you did not want to delete, you can always undo that. And to undo that, you could just go ahead and click on the undo icon right here, and that'll undo what you just cleared. So next we're going to talk about how to do formulas and functions. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is the difference between a formula and a function. So I'm going to go ahead and go into this new screen here. And a formula is something that looks like this. If you put in the equal sign first, and then you put in each cell individually, along with like plus signs and negative signs, that's what we think of as a formula. So if something that looks like this, this is what we think of as a formula. A function will actually have a name or a word of a function, and then in parentheses there's typically a cell range. So a function looks something like this. So this is typically what a function looks like, and we're going to do one of each just to show you how to do each one so you have experience in doing each one. And then the last thing we're going to show you how to do is how to use the auto sum to do a formula or a function. So first we're going to start with a formula with a function. And we're going to use a function to total up how many hours our locations are open here. So the first thing we want to do is click on the cell where we want the answer to go. And so I want the answer to go on cell C10 here. So I'm going to click on that cell. And then I'm going to go into the formula bar here, and the first thing I'm going to type in is the equal sign, because all formulas and functions begin with the equal sign. And then I'm going to type in each cell that I want to add together, separated by the plus sign. So I want to add C5, and you notice it puts a little blue frame around this cell, giving us a visual representation so we can see which cell we're actually selecting there, so we don't mistakenly use the wrong cell. And then I'm going to go plus C6, and that puts a red frame around that cell. And then plus C7, and that's kind of a purple frame. And then plus C8, and that's a green frame. So once we have all our cells selected and we're adding them all together, all we have to do is hit the Enter key, and that'll add that cell up and display the answer in our totals row. Next, we're going to use a function to add up the amount of staff we have at our different locations. And just like with a formula, the first thing you're going to do is click on the cell where you want the answer to go. And then you're going to click into the formula bar. And once again, you're going to put in the equal sign. And since we want to add these up, we're going to use the function called sum. And you'll notice that as I type it in here, I'm going to see other functions that are coming up that begin with sum. So sum if, sum product. If I wanted to use one of these functions, I could simply click on it from the list and it would go ahead and add it to my formula bar. But since I just want to use sum, I'll go ahead and click on it there. And if you click on it from there, it automatically puts in your parentheses. If you didn't click on it from sum, you'd have to put in the parentheses yourself. So you can always do that yourself. And then you could go ahead and add the number or add the cell range that you want to add together. And so in this case, I want to use the cell range D5 through D8. So I'm going to go ahead and type in D5, and then I'm going to put in a colon, which is the dot dot, and the colon essentially means through. So I'm going to be adding D5 through D8. And once I get that typed in there, you can see that they put a blue frame around the cells that I'm going to add together there. And then I'll just go ahead and close off that parentheses there, and then hit return or enter. And that'll go ahead and add these numbers up. Now the final way I'm going to show you to add things up, and this is probably the way you're going to use most of the time, is using the auto sum. And so what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to highlight everything that I want to add up, and the last cell that I add is where I want my answer to go. So I'm highlighting from cell E5 through E10. And then what I'm going to do is, let me shrink this down here so I can see the auto sum. And you'll notice in the corner here, you have your AutoSum command. And if I go ahead and click on AutoSum, that goes ahead and it automatically adds everything up and displays the answer in the cell. Now there are a couple things that I want to talk about too about putting in formulas and functions. Is number one, the answers that you get here in these cells are not permanent. Meaning one of the good things about using formulas or functions or the AutoSum is that if you change the information, like for example, if instead of 68 hours from downtown, we change that to 70 hours and hit enter, it automatically then re-adds it up. So instead of 272, it's 274. Or if we hired someone to work at Old Brook here, so I change that from 3 to 4, it automatically re-adds all that information up. Another thing about using formulas and functions is that they tend to stay constant even when you move cells around. So for example, if I highlight the cells in the column for videos here, and I put my cursor right on the edge of the cell, and I click and hold down the click and I drag it over, it'll automatically redo the formulas and functions that I had in it. Because you remember for column D here, I had typed in D8 or D5 colon D8. If I moved it over into E and then I click back on that cell, it automatically changes it over to E. So it keeps the formulas with the cells if you needed to move them around. So now I'm going to go ahead and do one more function to find the average of the amount of hours that our locations are open. And again, just like before, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click into the formula bar, put in the equal sign, only instead of typing the function for sum, I'm going to type this function for average. And then if I click on it here, it'll automatically put in the parentheses for me. So now I only have to put in the cell range, which is going to be C5 colon C8. Oops. And that goes ahead and that puts in the cell range there. Now I could have done this a different way too. For example, you see where it says here number 1? I could have just gone ahead and clicked right on the cell and then held down the click. You see when I click it says C5 up for average, and then if I drag that down it automatically then starts putting in the cell range. So I don't even really have to type it in. I could just point, click, and then drag it down, and that'll also populate the cell range. And then I could just go ahead and hit enter, and that'll run the function and give me the average there. Next, we're going to show you how to use the autofill feature to then find the averages for staff and videos. So the autofill feature is useful because normally if we wanted to find average, we would just have to click on the cell D12 and then type in the function for average. But because of the autofill, which is located in this lower corner, you see this little green square here in the lower right hand corner? If I click and hold down the click for that, I could drag that over staff or over the D column and over the E column and then release the click, and it'll automatically do for those columns what it did for the C column here. So it'll automatically find the average for the D column and the E column and display those in the cells. Now let's say we wanted to add a new column to our document, because you see here we've got our column heading for hours, staff, videos. Let's say we wanted to add something for DVDs, a column for DVDs, and we wanted to put that between staff and videos. To insert a new column into Microsoft Excel, you simply put your mouse pointer on the column to the right of the column where you want it to go, because the column is automatically going to go to the left of that. And then you would right click, and then you would choose Insert. And that inserts a new column into your document here. You can also do the same thing for rows. If we opened up a new location and we wanted to put that location between downtown and west side, a new row is going to go above whichever row we currently selected. So if I went on to row 6 and right clicked and then chose insert, that would insert a new row. We could also delete out a row or column as well. So if we wanted to delete out this column that we just put in, you could right click and then just choose delete. or you can put your mouse pointer over the row that you want to delete, right click, and then choose delete, and that will delete out your information. Another thing we can do is resize the column widths and row heights. So for example, if we wanted to make column A really wide enough so that way it would be able to fit any name of a location we can put in here. There's a couple different ways you can do this. One of the ways to do it, and probably the easiest way, is to simply just put your mouse pointer on the line between the A and the B column here, and then click and hold down the click. From there you can then drag the column and make it wider. You can also do the same thing for rows. If we wanted to make row 1 taller, we can put our mouse pointer on the line between row 1 and row 2 here, click and hold down the click, and then drag that down and make that taller. And when you do this, you want to make sure you're actually in the gray area here. You don't want to actually be down into your work area here, because that will not work properly. You want to make sure you're in the gray area between the columns here when you go to make that wider, and you want to be in the gray area in the rows before you drag that to make that taller. Another way you can change row height and column widths is with the format icon in your ribbon area. So let me just go ahead and shrink this screen down. And the format icon here is over here in the upper right hand corner. And if I were to select a couple cells or a couple columns here, like I'm selecting column C through E, and if I were to click on format, I can then choose column width, and that brings up a number. Like the column width for this particular Excel, the default is 10. So if I wanted to make them wider, I can choose 15 and click on OK, and that makes the column widths wider. And we can also do the same thing for row height. If I wanted to make row 3 here for location a little taller, I can click on that and then click on format and then choose row height and make the row a little bit taller. And one final way I can do this, or I can make the columns the exact width they need to be in order to fit the information in them, is to double click on the column there. So let me show you how to do this. So if I wanted to make column C, D, and E the exact width they need to be to fit all the information in them, I could just go between the C and the D and then double click. And that will make the column the exact width it needs to be to fit the information in. In this case, it's shrinking down the columns. But if the column had actually a lot of text in it and it needed to be made wider, it would actually make the column wider. Next, we can also change the font size and the font style. And by font, I just mean the type of lettering that's within the cell here. If I wanted to change this for cell A1 and I wanted to make it a different font and a different font style, I would just simply click on the cell, and then I would go ahead and up here where you see Calibri, that's the name of the font, and I could click there and I can choose a different font style. So as I scroll down through here, if I chose something like this one, it would go ahead and make that like a more cursive font, and I could even make it bigger by changing the font size. I can also change how the text is aligned within the cell here as well, and I can do that using the alignment icons here. As you can see right now, it's aligned to be at the bottom. If I wanted to move best video to the middle of the cell, I can click on that and that moves it to the middle of the cell. And if I wanted to be centered in the cell, I can choose center here and that will center it in the cell. And you don't have to do this one cell at a time. If I wanted to center all the information in the columns here, I can highlight the columns and then just choose center, and that centers all my numbers in the columns. Another thing I can do is change the numeric formatting around, so that way it looks like, let's say this was not the amount of videos we sold, but the amount of money we made selling videos. I can set this for currency. And to do that, I would just go into the numeric formatting area. Right now this is numeric formatting is for general here. And I can click on the drop down arrow there and I can choose currency from that. And that'll go ahead and add a $sign. It'll comma separate out the thousands, and it'll also put in a decimal point for like change. And we don't have to type in the numbers first and then set it for currency. you can actually just set a column for currency just simply by clicking on that column and then choosing currency, and then any number you type in will automatically get formatted for currency. So if I typed in 50 here, once I hit enter, that's going to automatically put in the dollar sign and the decimal places, and it'll also comma separate the thousands if needed. And here's also where we can format for date. For example, in cell C1 here, I had typed in August 2018 and it auto-formatted like it did earlier. If I wanted to set this so it won't auto-format, one of the things that I can do is I can go ahead and you see it chose this custom format, but I can just go ahead and set this to text. And when you set something to text, it'll take whatever you type in and it won't try to auto-format it. It'll treat everything as text. And since it had formatted this for a date, it can't go back and put in the initial text, and that's why we have this weird number in here. But now if I typed in August 2018, it will automatically keep August 2018, and it won't auto-format it because I had set it as text. Now, if we did want to choose a different date format than the one that Microsoft Excel automatically formatted for dates, you can do that by clicking here, and you have two options here, a short date or a long date. If you actually wanted more date options, you can choose more number formats here, and this will give you a lot more formatting options, not just for date, but for numbers, currency, percentages, time, etc. And so if I chose date from here, I've got all these date options to choose from if I so desired. But in this case, I'm not going to change the date option, so I'm just going to cancel this out. The final thing I'm going to show you here is how to create a chart from the information we have here. And creating a chart is pretty simple. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight the information I want to create the chart from. So I'm highlighting here from A3 through E10. I'm not going to worry about averages here when creating the chart. I just want the numbers here, the totals, and then the numbers here. And then after that, let me go ahead and shrink this down a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and click on the Insert tab here. And from the Insert tab, I'm going to see this line here for recommended charts. And I'm not going to choose a recommended chart. I'm actually just going to choose a bar chart here. I'm going to choose a 2D column chart, and that puts the chart right into our document here. So I've got the table here with the information, and now I've got a chart that's reflecting that table. And one of the things to point out about this chart is that it is linked to the information in the table. So that way, if I change the information in the table, it will also change the chart. Like here right now, you're really only seeing the line for the amount of videos here. But if for some reason we were to hire, say, 4,000 people for Old Brook, if I change that to 4,000 and then hit enter, that would go ahead and now you're seeing a line displayed here. So changing the information in the table will also change the information in the chart. And the final thing I'm going to show you about charts is that you can make the chart here its own worksheet tab. So first I'm going to go ahead and make the screen full screen here. And to make the chart a part of a worksheet tab, you just go into a blank white area of the chart and then right click. And one of your options here is going to be to move the chart. So you click on Move Chart, and right now it's showing that this chart is an object in sheet 4, but we could move it to a new sheet called Chart 1. And we could change this name if we want to, but I'm going to leave it called Chart 1. And then I'll click OK. And you see that it put this chart and it added a little tab here for chart 1, so it's a new worksheet tab, and now the chart is displaying here. And you still have your table. If I click on the tab here, you can still see your table here. Your chart's just in a tab next to it, and they're still linked together. So if I change the information in your table, it will also change the information in the chart still. If you want to find more information where you can take online courses about Excel and a lot of other Microsoft Office products such as Word and PowerPoint, and just a lot of other computer information or a lot of other computer classes, you can go to our website and you can link to these 3 resources: lynda.com, Universal Class, and Gale Courses. Lynda.com is a leading online platform offering video courses in a wide range of software products. Universal Class has some software options as far as how to use Excel and PowerPoint and Access, but they also have a lot of other courses such as for office skills and for accounting and for teaching skills and that sort of thing. Same thing with Gale courses. To link to these resources off of our website, you would just go to fountaindale.org, and then along the top here you would hover over Learning and Tech and then choose e-resources. Once you've chosen e-resources, you'll scroll down to where you see lifelong learning, and then you click on lifelong learning and you'll see Gale courses, lynda.com, and Universal Class here. So if you have a library card, you can just simply click on it, sign in with your library card, and begin taking classes. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I certainly hope that you've learned something here today.